Hey there, Diocese of the Rio Grande. I know you know Mike Wallens, who is the vicar of St. Paul's in Marfa and also kind of the priest of the Big Bend.
Yes, that's safe to say.
In many ways. So, Mike, tell us about the extent of the ministry here and all the things you do. And then we'll talk a little bit about the stuff we've done this week together.
Okay. So out here we have 5 congregations that I serve along with Katie Hudak, who's the curate of the Big Bend. And the sort of the central, my home base, I'll put it that way. My home base is here at St. Paul's Episcopal Church in Marfa. And then we also serve St. James Episcopal Church in Alpine, Texas, and St. Stephen's Episcopal Church in Fort Stockton, Texas. And those 3 churches we do every Sunday. And then on Saturday nights, we are in Lajitas at the Chapel of Joseph and Mary. And then on Wednesdays, which works out better for everybody's schedule in Terlingua, we are at Santa Ynez. In addition to that, we have an active ministry here along the border, working closely with the Border Patrol in both working with asylum seekers. So, for example, right now, people are bussed in from Del Rio to the station in Alpine, and we get a call and we go there and find out what people might need. And we have a coalition that's been built up, made up of churches and private businesses and individuals who then, when we get a call, we go either to the Alpine station and find out what the needs are, and within 2 hours they try and do this turnaround. And then or the Border Patrol will turn different individuals or families over to us so that we can help them figure out how to get to where they want to go. Usually it's with another family member or some community they're familiar with. In addition, then we also do pastoral care for the Border Patrol. There's a lot of moral wounding that goes on with the Border Patrol agents, and most of our work is with the local Border Patrol in the big sector. Sometimes we'll do some Zoom pastoral care, but for the most part, we're based here. In addition, then we have which you'll hear about in just a few minutes, we have a very active youth ministry program that was partially funded by the UTO grant a number of years ago. And the goal was to set up a youth ministry that goes down the 67 corridor from Marfa into Ojinaga, Mexico. And so we are currently active in that. That youth ministry is also spread into Sul Ross University in Alpine, as well as into Terlingua and Lajitas. So that sort of gives you an idea of everything that goes on out here.
It's amazing. And it's I mean, so much of this is thanks to you and your willingness as a priest to serve beyond just one congregation. And also over the years since we've been working together, St. Paul's has really shifted. Each of the congregations has shifted from kind of an identity that we're on our own, even going back to there was a time when they were networked working on outreach ministry, but still each congregation kind of had its own identity. And now they still have their own identity. We're not closing any of the buildings, but they're collaborating together. Tell us about that process, because I think particularly as we talk about a diocese going forward, as we face financial challenges, I think the Big Bend is a real example to us of the ways in which a team of clergy serving multiple places without yoking those congregations necessarily, but actually making sure that the teaching of the gospel, the growing of those churches, and then outreach ministries in the general area, the congregations naturally kind of help each other out and work together in that sort of a way. Tell us how that process has been for you, because you came here as a priest just for here.
Exactly. And the Holy Spirit sort of pushed me, and I stumbled along, and there in St. James, for example, the vicar that was there retired, and I was asked to sort of fill in until they found someone, and they it just didn't work out for a number of different reasons. So then I started there, and also through Ultravez, which is um, a store that provides clothes, slightly or used clothes for people and other things in that part of the border in Terralingua. There was a congregation called Santa Ynez, um, and it's predominantly Hispanic, and they haven't. The first thing we did was, according to Marcy Reed, who's lived there for I don't know how long, um, we decided to start with Our Lady of Guadalupe, and they hadn't had that celebration in over 40 years. There's no Roman Catholic Church there, and so we had about anywhere, I think it was 75 to 100 people in the ghost town. The little boys were doing this machete dance, and they just love twirling those machetes. Dull, of course. And the folklorical dancers danced, and then we processed up to the church and recounted the story of Our Lady of Guadalupe and said prayers, and then had a little banquet afterwards. So that grew. Then I have done several weddings prior to that in Lajitas, and they have a chapel there. It's part of the golf resort, actually. I don't play golf, and so when I talked with Sandy Price, who oversees that chapel and weddings and all sorts of stuff there, we decided to start offering services. And so people come in. And prior to my being there, Kay Jennings was going down there once a month. So we decided to increase that to once a week. And so the attendance varies depending on the season of the year and what's going on. Fort Stockton had a priest who would come down twice a month from New Mexico, Father Black, and I don't know who was before him. And then he developed a heart condition and unfortunately died. And so then we started going up there to Fort Stockton, and all these are different congregations with different, in Fort Stockton it's primarily ranchers, but there's a number of people who are very involved in the town there. In Terralingua, it's primarily Hispanic, and we are developing a college ministry in Alpine, as well as just keeping the doors open for people to come. And then Marfa has a lot of art community people and ranchers and a Hispanic community. And out here, it's 60-40 as far as the Hispanic population and Anglo. On the border, it's 80-20. And so I just stumbled along. And just one other thing. And so the 5 congregations decided to get back together. And so we meet once a quarter in a different location because everybody wanted to see the other churches and everything. And so we have Deb Sampson come in, and we meet once a quarter. And the first thing she had us do to help us share with one another about who we are as different congregations is we had to decorate these cereal boxes.
I love it.
And talk about what's in it. So, for instance, where the ingredients would be for St. Paul's, we said love, Eucharist, kindness, caring, joy, coffee cake, peace, music, scripture, people. morning prayer online sometimes, sharing, grace, hope, laughter, and compassion. That's our ingredients. And so we meet once a quarter, and people have really grown together and understand one another. And that's where, if there's a need in a particular area or congregation, we talk about it, we figure out how to support one another, and we do it.
It's wonderful. And so these are not yoked congregations in any formal way. No. There's not one bishop's committee or vestry for the whole thing. It's very important, particularly for me as a bishop, thinking about this as a possible model for the future. Each congregation retains its own building and its own integrity and its own identity. We're just connecting them together by the clergy rotating around and by these quarterly gatherings where each gets to know the other, and then moments of collaboration just kind of present themselves, and the ministry continues to expand. And what we're finding is, well, I'll also say that the diocese is a partner in this as well.
Yes.
The trustees of the diocese have purchased the vicarage here in Marfa and are contributing that, as well as a little bit of extra money to support having the curate here. And that allows 2 full-time paid clergy to look after these 5 congregations. That's a 3-year experiment that is going well, and it means we're doing a better job of taking care of you, because you're not doing it all by yourself, right? And there are, in an area like this, there are sometimes clergy who retire here. And so from time to time, there will be retired clergy who may wish to join that team. But I think particularly having 5 congregations as spread out as they are here, having 2 paid clergy has really made the difference, in the sense that in each place we're confirming and receiving people. In each place, the congregations are growing.
Yeah, we are, but we also come together, like for confirmation classes, Episcopal 101. The preference is in person, but clearly that can't always happen, and so we offer them both online and in person at the same time, and it's developed some really nice relationships between individuals and churches also. And so while you've been out here, of course, we've had confirmation and receptions in each of the churches with the people from that congregation. So no one has to go all the way to Fort Stockton or all the way to Marfa to have hands laid on them.
That's been wonderful. The Fort Stockton congregation was meeting out at one of the ranches, right. And we confirmed and received 6 people in the living room with the whole congregation sort of crammed in there. That was wonderful. And then yesterday we confirmed 3 at Santa Ynez in Terlingua. Mm-hmm. And then today we're at St. Paul's and Alpine. It's been a wonderful time.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun out here.
It is. Well, and that spirit of collaboration, it may be just sort of part of our identity as a diocese, because you're not just collaborating with the Episcopal churches around the area,
right.
But like particularly with the first place we went together on this visit was to meet the youth ministers. And that's not just an Episcopalian thing. That's a much broader kind of ecumenical engagement. Tell us about how that got started and all about it.
When I first came here, I was approached by some people in Marfa saying, and this was a result of a teenager's death. He got too close to the train tracks, and we're not sure if it was suicidal or just not paying attention. Anyways, there's nothing out here for youth, and so we formed a committee made up of people from different churches and some who don't go to church but are very strong believers, and decided to partner with Young Life, and also through, as I said, a grant from UTO, we're able to provide seed money. And so Connor Travis, and at the time he wasn't married, but now his wife Caroline are here, and Vicente in Presidio was hired with some of that seed money, and we met with Vicente and his fiance yesterday in Terralingua. And that ministry has developed so that the goal of Young Life and what we do is go out on the fringes and talk with teenagers and befriend teenagers who no one pays attention to. And that then they come into the fold, so to speak, and then other people hear about fun and ministry and pastoral care, and it just grows from there. They've also developed a single parent, a teenage mothers group, and so they provide that type of support. And from there, a college ministry developed, because as the teenagers graduated, most of them can't afford or can't leave this area because they have jobs, so they go to Saul Ross University, and so that carries over there. And then everybody's related. It seems like everybody's related almost to one another. So a cousin heard in Terralingua about what was going on here and say, why can't we have that there? And so then it grew. And going into Ojinaga, there's a lot of crossing. A number of teenagers will go to the high school in either Terralingua or Marfa. And so then we pick up opportunities for youth ministry down in Mexico. So,
Yeah, I think a lot of people who don't live on the border don't understand how fluid the border is, in the
exactly.
sense that there have been families who have been here before the United States existed,
Exactly.
and they're farming on both sides of the river, and so generations have not seen that border as an international border, but just a river. And so there are people who are U.S. citizens who are living in Oinaga, who are attending high school here because they're U.S. citizens, and that's the way that is, and they cross every day, all that time. So the blending of the young people is it's on both sides of the border all the time.
Mm.
That's just sort of the way it goes. And give us I mean, I was amazed at the number of young people we're talking about here, because you might think, oh, it's a bunch of small towns. Most Episcopal churches, if the youth group has 10 or 15 people in it, that's a huge youth group. But I love, there's so much wonderful things that the InterVarsity team is working on. Give us a sense of the scale of the number of young people we're talking about.
We're talking about every week over 400. Not necessarily all coming to one place, but if you add them all up, and it's about 400. And so we usually meet over a meal that's provided by a lot of the families in the area. We have Bibles. We have a general meeting once a week, usually on Mondays, and then Bible studies on Wednesdays. And not everybody comes to both, but each week it's over 400 youth, and and then each area has its own set of needs that we try and work with. What grew out of this also is the Alameda Ranch, which is in between Marfa and Presidio, and it's, among other things, it is allowing students to build a business together and learn about that. So they've been planting flowers, and they're trying to figure out where the money's going to go. They're not looking to make money themselves. They're looking to say, okay, well, here's a need, so let's give money to that. And it's just exciting. And the youth here really are the ones in charge. They're the CEOs of the business.
Yeah.
All we do is support them and sometimes raise some questions to get them to think about what's the best way to move with this business and everything.
It's wonderful. And part of what I love about the Young Life model is the so people are often, they experience Young Life in high school, they catch the drift of it. They're then able to continue into young adulthood and become mentors paid by Young Life to
Right.
come to places like Marfa or Presidio. And the way it works when they come is that they they create a community of adults from the community that becomes their prayer team, their mentors,
Right.
their connections in the high school, their connections with businesses locally, their connections with clergy and the churches. And so it draws people together, like you say, maybe they're in church, maybe they're in the school, maybe they're in the business, but they're concerned about young people.
Exactly.
And so there's this kind of adult advisory group that surrounds the young adult who is doing the work, and the and it creates this web of love and support for the, in this case, Connor and Caroline. And they then are working with the young people who then take on leadership
Hmm.
roles, it's the young people who invite their friends to come and to get
Exactly.
involved. But having those young adults surrounded by local adults who care and have compassion and can provide guidance and resource is a tremendous model that I think we need to think about in the Episcopal Church as well, because
Exactly.
it is impacting 400 kids a week
Yeah.
here in Marfa. And so some of the things we've talked about is there a way for us to connect what's going on here with what's happening at Camp Stoney and Bishop's Ridge, and to have it go both ways. So there's some exciting stuff we might be able to work on together.
Oh, for sure. We're thrilled to have people come here, and really through the pilgrimages with the Rio Grande Borderland Ministries to please come and go on a pilgrimage, because how the border is portrayed by media or various politicians is not the reality that we live with out here. And I think I'd love for you to come visit and take away and share with the people that your congregations about what you saw and heard. And it's an exciting place out here.
It's wonderful.
Yeah.
It really is. Yeah. Yeah. And so tell us a little bit more about the work with the Border Patrol and with the asylum seekers, and some of what's happening, up to the minute in terms of that. Rio Grande Borderland Ministries, for those of you who don't know, look it up on the web. Just Google Rio
Yeah.
Grande Borderland Ministries. The Diocese of the Rio Grande is active, encompasses 40% of the U.S.-Mexico border, and we are active from the Boot Heel of New Mexico all the way through the Big Bend. And each of the areas along the border requires different ministry and has different needs. So, but it's all networked and working together. So Ana Reza, who is based out of El Paso, Lee Curtis, who is based out of El Paso, running the shelter at St. Christopher's El Paso, are connected deeply with what you're doing here.
Exactly.
And there's opportunities for people outside the diocese or inside the diocese to come and do spiritual pilgrimages, to learn about the borderlands and to experience the spirituality of this beautiful part of God's world. So tell us a little bit about your experience with the pilgrims who have come, and where have they come from, and what have they done, and how does that pilgrimage thing work?
They come from all over the country. And we develop partnerships with various churches and even dioceses. And they'll come into El Paso and help out at the shelter there at St. Christopher's, spend the night. We have plenty of room for volunteers to sleep with the people, and help with meals and getting them oriented. And then we take people into Juarez, and they meet some other people in the churches, the Anglican churches that we um, try and work with. And then once they've done that, they will meet with the Border Patrol, but it's usually a press agent for the Border Patrol, and it's very scripted. That's a
Yeah,
good
in
word.
the El Paso thing, it's
Yeah.
very tight, right? Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah.
And then they'll come out here and they'll meet with the Border Patrol, which is it's not scripted necessarily. It's very open. So you meet with the Border Patrol out here. The agents have these huge, huge hearts. And so, for example, when a group will come in from Del Rio, and there's this 2 hour gap, you'll see a number of the agents end up at Dollar General buying coloring books for the kids and diapers, for babies and whatever is needed. And they spend their own money doing that in addition to what we bring in with our coalition. Um, and and then uh, eh, the pilgrimages, the people there, they get a tour. I mean, they take them back to where they're processed. It's very transparent out here, and you can ask the agents whatever questions you want, and they will do their best to answer them. Um, in a very candid way. And so it's really help people understand the difficult position that the Border Patrol's in, because their mission is narrowly focused that people don't seem to understand. They are to pick up, to rescue, and to process, and then they either make determination: are they going to be deported, depending on the policies of the country at the time? Will they be deported? Will they be released to the coalition so that we can get them where they need to go? Will they be, if they have a criminal record, then they get sent to detention. If they're children, um, unaccompanied, then they get sent to the shelter here in Pecos, which is about an hour and a half from here. And we have a ministry, active ministry there with the children. Um,
Yes, and I visited that one
yeah,
a couple years ago. It is not. I mean, you all might remember when there were unaccompanied minors that were being kept kind of under the bridge, and we were very concerned a number of years ago with how the young people were being treated. The shelter that we visited in Pecos, they are very much concerned about. It's like a big youth camp, is what it's like,
yeah.
and they care about the kids, the young people's spiritual needs. They're doing post trauma care because many of the young people, if you're traveling by your own, making this journey, you have experienced a lot of trauma and lived with fear and anxiety like no human being should have to live with. And so there are arts programs, there's therapy, there's athletics programs to try to help those unaccompanied minors deal with the trauma that they have been through, and there are clergy that are there to help with their spiritual needs as well.
And so we provide them with like prayer squares that are made by the main headquarters for these come out of St. Gabriel's in Leesburg, Virginia, which is a bilingual church made up of both documented and undocumented people. They knit these, they send them to us. I don't have any of the little sock dolls they make for them. We also provide rosaries and Bibles, both in English and Spanish, and we can't keep up with the teenagers and the children, because you talk about people with a strong faith, that's all they have to hang on to. And so we're constantly trying to keep up with the demand for rosaries and Bibles, and we've got prayer squares, and it really means a lot to them, because when they a number of times I'll give them a prayer square and I'll explain to them, well, these have been prayed over by people in the church in Connecticut, and we distribute them here. And they'll start crying because they didn't think anybody cared about them, because they're in this shelter. So
It's wonderful. Yeah. Well, and you've talked about the work that happens with the Border Patrol with respect to moral injury and the
mm,
moral wounding, the the stories which we hear sometimes because of course the cartels are active on both sides, and they're moving both weapons, guns, and drugs across the border, and using people to do that. And there are sometimes we've known of examples where a person is forced by the cartel to carry drugs or weapons across the border under the threat that they will kill their families or they will kill them if they don't do it. And so people are being forced to cross the border in those situations. And if they're found and arrested here with drugs on them, the law says they're criminals, but the Border Patrol knows that they were threatened with death or death in their families if they didn't do what the cartels are forcing them to do. And so it puts the officers in a difficult situation, always balancing their duty to uphold the law, which they want to do, but also with the humanitarian reality of people being forced into criminal activity, that that they are victims as well.
So out here, the sector chief told the agents when someone's picked up with drugs and they tell this terrible story about their lives or family lives being threatened, the Border Patrol knows who's who in the cartel. And so if the names resonate with the agents, they will not charge them with bringing drugs over. They have 72 hours to bring the charges. They will be charged with crossing in a place other than a port of entry. But that's the type of thing the Border Patrol works on. They put me through their resiliency training, and then I provide some of that with them. We also minister to the couples, so a Border Patrol and their spouses, because the family also is impacted by the work. And just to give you an example of this moral wounding, a number of years ago, for example, most of the agents here, all of them speak Spanish. A good portion of them come from the Triangle in Central America. And so when there was family separation, one of them had to separate families from the village in which he was from, and he knew them. And he couldn't go home for 3 days and 3 nights because he felt so guilty that he could go home to his family, and he just separated this family that he knew and loved.
And when you say separation, we may not remember what that was like. That this means separating the children from the parents.
Exactly.
Right? So that they would be treated differently.
Exactly.
In the shelter system.
Exactly.
So the agents, following the policies of the United States government at that time,
right,
required them to literally take children out of the arms of their parents and to take the children out into a detention center. So that you can just imagine the fear in those children, the panic in the parents, the tears and the crying and the wailing that those agents were engaged in. And they're human beings who took this job to do justice and care, provide protection, but engaging in that kind of being when doing your job requires you to do something that hurts your soul.
Exactly.
That's when they call Father Mike Wallens.
Well, yeah,
and you help
among
others. There's a whole network here, and so it's important that everybody understands that the border situation is complicated. It's not just black and white. It's not just criminals or not criminals. It is people forced into crime. It is, and so we act not in terms of the politics. We act in terms of the gospel mandate that we love and care for everybody. And that includes the Border Patrol agents and their families. And it includes the real human needs of those who are crossing for whatever reason.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, and there's one more thing. We got to talk about the trees.
Oh yeah.
We got to talk about the trees because there's a whole other thing.
Yes. So the Eco Justice Group in the Episcopal Church, the National Church, every year gives out grants to organizations, to Episcopal churches, and we applied for one of those grants and received it. And so we received, if you look at a satellite picture of Marfa, Texas, the northern part of the town, trees galore. Southern part, no trees. And
separated by the railroad tracks.
That's right.
The other side of the
exactly.
tracks.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so we applied for a grant to plant grown trees in the affordable housing part of Marfa. And that grant was awarded to us, and we work under the condition to apply for the grant, you have to partner with another organization. So we partnered with the Big Bend Conservation Alliance, which is an organization that obviously deals in ecology and conservation, but really uses the wisdom and the understanding of the indigenous people from this area, the Mescalera Apache, the Jumanji Apache, and the Lipan Apache are all, this is the ground we're on. And so the trees will be planted and be cared for. We, members of St. Paul's, will partner with people who live in the affordable housing to care for it. They'll adopt that tree and care for it.
It's wonderful.
Yeah.
And so it is, I mean, again, people might not understand the way racism works out here in the West, where for many years, people of Hispanic or Mexican descent were segregated from the schools. And there's a video about the Blackwell School, which we did a couple of years ago that I'll link to in this video. But it's very much the case that across the tracks here in Marfa, life was lived very differently. And you went to a different school where you were forced not to speak Spanish. The cemetery here is segregated, the white side and the Hispanic side. And then there are the 3 Apache bands who are part of this area as well. So part of what this is about is environmental racism and remediating that by bringing shade trees that will help both reduce the temperature in the neighborhood, but also, increase the property values in that part of the world by making it a nicer place to live. And
Yes.
So this is really engaging in what is over a century of injustice.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
you're up to some good work here, Mike Wallens.
So please come out and visit.
Yeah,
We'd love to have
it.
you see what goes on out here, participate in what goes out here, join a RGBM pilgrimage, and I can guarantee you it will be fun, enlightening, and challenging all at the same time.
Thanks be to God for you, Mike, and for
Thank
everybody who's working for the Episcopal Church out here in the Big Bend.
Thank you.